Well, this woman who was crying, we couldn't get to talk to her. There was a young guy who came over, and he said, "You invented a new language," and he was very enthusiastic. And there is, I found that there was a difference of generations. Kids who were in their 20s, for them, they didn't care about Fidel Castro or the history. For them, Fidel Castro was like Dr. Frankenstein. It could be interchangeable. And they created a monster that doesn't work. So their questions and comments were more towards transhumanism and the future of humanity, dehumanization. But people that were like us in our 40s or older, they were more concerned, of course, about the project of the new man. And that woman who was from our generation, who was crying, obviously, even though we couldn't talk to her, resonated with her somehow.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Miguel, talking about language, in this case, cinematographic language, I remember you explaining to other audiences and to myself in some interviews how you don't, for example, you don't use the same frames like we are used to the cinematographic language. You talk, you go back, you cut, and you don't do that, for example. And is there any other traits, aspects that do you feel that you intentionally do to develop a language, audiovisual language that people that we don't know about that much, we don't even realize, but still is there and it contributes to your very personal poetics?
Yeah, for me, it's a way of listening to what the characters are saying, each specific line, and finding what's the best way to frame this. So I spend hours in a location to find all the possibilities and the different angles. It's a way of destabilizing the audience, because the moment you start seeing the same image over and over, cutting back and forward to a close-up, it creates a comfortable feeling. And to me, the feeling has to be a constant, it has to be an uncomfortable cinema. If I have to define what independent what the character or what the scene is saying, I'm finding an appropriate angle for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the same principle as in literature. You write a sentence, and once you write a period and you start another sentence, you're conveying a different idea, a different feeling. So when you translate that to cinematic language, it's ironic that I started in literature. I didn't have a camera, and I wrote my first novel when I hadn't made any of my feature films. So I ended up making films by accident, because my dad came to visit my aunt in Miami and gave him a VHS. She gave him a VHS camcorder, and they were going to sell it because it was during the special period. But when I started playing with it, I realized I could combine my drawings with the literature, and it became the ideal way to express myself. And that was it, because the possibility of having a video camera in Cuba in the 90s was not very realistic.
That was a pleasure for you.
Yeah. I had to actually, I didn't have a computer to edit, so I had to film those first short films in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell the actors, cut, don't move, and change the angle and continue. So it was a good training to actually develop this idea of never using the same camera angles. If I had to cut anyway, it would have to be to a different camera angle. And that comes from that, but that also comes from a lot of anime, because of the same reasons. They didn't have, if you look at the visual grammar of the anime, it's much more advanced than, let's say, Disney.
Also Hollywood.
Also Hollywood.
Yeah, and they're not at the same angle.
Hollywood actually does, for action scenes, they go overboard and they have all these different, but when you have conversations, it's usually master shot and ping pong.
Mm.
Yeah.
One more question we have.
There's a 9 o'clock show in here.
Oh,
Speaking of ping pong.
Another question, comment?
yeah.
No, I just wanted to ask you, is there a particular filmmaker or film that impacted you, that
Wow.
you resonated with your work?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, so Andrei Tarkovsky. I was 17 when my parents told me I should go see Solaris. I had done a short film that was very atmospheric, and they told me, you're gonna like this. And yeah, I was blown away, because it was a way of using science fiction that I was not accustomed to. It was basically a love story about loss, and it was so dramatic, and the special effects were not important, and that was very big for me. But then I discovered, that was at the Cinematheque, which is 5 blocks away from where I live. Then I discovered Godard, Antonioni, and David Lynch, and yeah, I became a cinephile. Because up to that point, I was just watching mostly what was on television, which was anime and Well, that's not true. I was watching a show that I followed, even as a kid, called 24 Frames Per Second by a Cuban film critic called Enrique Colina, and that was also a very good film school because he's the kind of critic that will deconstruct the cinematic language. You know, most critics say, talk about the story and the acting and dialogue, but they don't really go into cinematic language, and he was able to do it in a way that anybody could understand it. So that was very important for me as well. And there was the show Historia del Cine, which on Thursday they will show films by Bergman, and I would watch that as well. But it was really Solaris watching it on the big screen that really made the biggest impact for me.
Talking about
you.
the big screen, how did you like to see your film
It
in
was,
the big screen
it's
today?
great. It's a luxury that I don't have in Cuba. I wish I could do that there, but
Because
yeah.
you mentioned that.
Yeah. We did have a screening at the Norwegian embassy, which was an open door screening, and that was incredible. It was there were people that stayed outside. It was 300 people, and but they reacted. They were laughing. It was a very involved audience. Yeah.
Your next project, Miguel,
I can't really talk about it, but it's a documentary.
documentary.
Yeah, but it's been done, like Jose Marti said, en silencio tenido que ser, which means
Sometimes
it's been
it's the
doing
best
inside.
way to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, Miguel.